Hi there, I'm Kimberly, and I just turned 29. Once, I made the questionable choice to marry a man burdened with a mountain of issues. I was under the misguided impression that love could fix everything. I thought I could help him see his own worth. How wrong I was. While love is powerful, it's not a magic wand that can teach someone self-worth. Let's call my ex Joseph. He was consumed by the need to please his parents, not just the usual desire to make them proud, but an all-encompassing obsession that dictated his every move. It was as if his self-esteem was entirely dependent on their approval. As for his parents, whom I'll refer to as Mr. and Mrs. Ellis for anonymity, they were classic disengaged parents. Their lack of involvement left Joseph yearning for their attention and validation, which was truly heartbreaking to witness. I soon realized I couldn't fill the emotional void they created. To make matters worse, Joseph had a terrible habit of draining our savings on extravagant gifts and vacations for them, expenses that were completely unnecessary. It felt like our money vanished directly into Mr. and Mrs. Ellis's pockets, amplifying my frustration. This reckless spending sparked constant arguments, leaving me feeling as though I was in a competition for Joseph's attention with his parents. It was exhausting and toxic for our marriage. Despite the chaos and ongoing disagreements, my feelings for Joseph remained steadfast. I hoped he would eventually break free from his parents' unrealistic expectations and find true happiness within himself. But it became painfully obvious that my love alone wasn't enough to pull him away from their harmful influence. Brace yourselves, the story takes a sharper turn. One day, Joseph approached me, his expression serious, hinting that he had something significant to share. Given our tumultuous history, I prepared for another conflict, unaware of the bombshell that was about to drop. "Kimberly, there's something important I need to discuss," he began, setting a grave tone. "What's going on?" I asked, already bracing for impact. "It's about my parents. They're retiring soon, and I've been thinking of surprising them with a luxury vacation. It'll be a pretty penny," he said, a mix of excitement and apprehension in his voice. "That sounds lovely, but as long as it comes from your personal savings." "I don't want to dip into our joint savings again," I replied, hoping to sidestep another financial argument. "I don't have enough on my own. I was hoping to use some of our savings," Joseph admitted, looking hopeful yet anxious. "Joseph, if it's beyond what we can comfortably afford, maybe we should reconsider," I suggested gently, trying to ground him in reality. But he quickly lost his cool. "You just don't get it, Kimberly. I love my parents. I want to do something extraordinary for them." "Love isn't about counting every penny, it's about grand gestures," he argued passionately. I responded, "But love also means being there for each other and making sacrifices together, not at the expense of our financial stability. This trip might mean a lot to them, but we have to consider our future too." Joseph remained adamant. "I have to do this for them. I thought you of all people would understand. They're everything to me." "And you're everything to me, Joseph, but we need to be practical. We can't just deplete our savings for a single trip," I reasoned, hoping to find some common ground. He accused me of being selfish, unable to grasp the significance of his gesture. "It's not about being selfish, it's about being sensible and planning for what's ahead," I explained, curious about how much he intended to spend. When he mentioned needing all of it, my heart sank. "All of our savings? That's reckless," I exclaimed, shocked by the scale of his request. "You're being heartless," he shot back, convinced I didn't understand his desire to make his parents happy. "No, Joseph, I'm being realistic. We can't afford to give away $85,000 on a whim," I said, my patience wearing thin. His offhand mention of getting the money back later only deepened my frustration. "Really, Joseph? That's not how this works," I snapped, my sarcasm barely hiding my disbelief. It was clear we had reached an impasse, our differing views on love, responsibility, and financial security colliding more than ever. The argument escalated, our voices rising, and soon objects were flying across the room, shattering on impact as if punctuating our heated exchange. In the midst of this chaos, Joseph dropped a bombshell. "If you can't support me on this, I want a divorce." He probably expected me to panic, to desperately cling to the remnants of our marriage. Instead, I found a calm resolve within myself. "Okay, Joseph, if that's truly what you want." The shock on his face was unmistakable. He had anticipated tears, pleas for him to reconsider, but all he got was my unwavering stance. I was done indulging his fantasies. If he wanted to squander his future chasing shadows, he was free to do so without me. I didn't hold back my words. I laid everything on the table, making it clear that Joseph's endless quest for his parents' approval was as futile as trying to shield oneself from a storm with just an umbrella, an exercise in futility. He tried to counter my points, but a simple raise of my hand silenced him. I expressed my exhaustion from fighting for a love ensnared by unrealistic expectations and an unquenchable thirst for validation. Go ahead and spend your fortune chasing after those who hardly acknowledge you, I said, firm in my resolve to break the cycle of disappointment and empty promises. In that moment, the harsh truth hit him. The grim reality of our situation finally dawned on him. Our marriage had devolved into a battleground, and it was time to raise the white flag and seek peace on separate paths. A month has passed since the divorce was finalized, and I can honestly say the feeling of liberation is exhilarating. Gone are the days of grappling with endless disputes over finances or yearning for validation that was never ours to claim. Now, I breathe freely, unburdened by the weight of his doubts that once cast shadows over my days. The sun seems to shine a little brighter with each new morning. True, Joseph has made attempts to re-enter my life, cloaked in concern and questions about my well-being. But I see through his facade. There's no way I would fall for his ploys again. As the saying goes, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. I resolutely turned away from his efforts to reignite any spark that once existed between us. I realized I had invested too much in trying to fix someone who wasn't interested in changing. It was time to focus on my own growth and happiness. Rebuilding my life wasn't easy. Splitting our shared assets and adjusting to a new financial reality demanded patience and resilience. I had grown accustomed to a certain way of living, but adapting wasn't unfamiliar to me. I embraced the hard work required to reconstruct my life anew, discovering strength and independence I didn't know I had. I hadn't realized what was within me until I rekindled old friendships, dove back into hobbies I had set aside, and discovered new interests. The world suddenly felt vast and full of possibilities, and I was eager to make the most of this fresh start. Of course, there were moments filled with self-doubt and solitude, and adjusting to a new budget was a challenge. The wounds from my dissolved marriage didn't heal overnight, but with each passing day, I found solace in knowing I was no longer sacrificing my happiness for someone else's insecurities. The ease with which I moved forward felt like a sign that I had clung to a lost cause for far too long. It amazed me how much I could achieve once freed from that burden. A month later, I was still navigating these adjustments, but I was flourishing all the same. Joseph's incessant messaging took on a new tone. He now painted himself as the protagonist of a dramatic tale, claiming to be in danger and insisting that I meet with him. Exhausted by his constant attempts to contact me, I knew it was time to confront the situation. Joseph, we've been through this. We're divorced. It's time for us to move on, I stated firmly. Kimberly, please. I just need a moment to explain. I'm in serious trouble and you're the only one I can turn to for help, he implored. Perhaps it was the long absence of his voice, or maybe he truly sounded scared, but against my better judgment, I agreed to meet. Fine, but we're not meeting at my place. Let's go to that cafe we used to frequent. No tricks. Understood? Thank you, Kimberly. I promise I just need someone to listen. You're the only one who understands me, he replied, relief evident in his tone. I know what you're thinking. Why would I agree to meet Joseph after everything? Believe me, I question my own decision, yet there's a part of us that sometimes succumbs to a mix of curiosity and lingering concern, no matter how strong we are. I couldn't ignore his plea. Divorce or not, a part of me still cared. So there we sat, opposite each other in a charming bistro, enveloped by the comforting aroma of coffee. However, not even the pleasant scent could soften the thick air of tension between us. Observing Joseph, anxiety etched across his face as he tried to tug at my heartstrings with those sorrowful eyes, was almost amusing this time. However, I wasn't swayed. Leaning back, I maintained a composed demeanor, ready to hear him out while firmly keeping control. I intended to steer this conversation on my terms. Okay, Joseph, you have my attention for now. What's the supposed danger you're in? And just to be clear, playing the hero isn't on my agenda anymore. I'm done cleaning up your messes, I said, keeping my tone firm yet open. Joseph exhaled deeply, his face a mix of regret and desperation that was almost pitiful to witness. Still, I steeled myself against any emotional manipulation. I know I've made mistakes, Kimberly, but this situation is different. I've gotten involved with some seriously bad people. I owe them a lot of money, and they're not known for their patience, he confessed. I couldn't help but raise an eyebrow, skeptical of his dramatic tale. Really, Joseph? Dangerous people? Are we revisiting the story of your imaginary friends who always seem to attract trouble? My disbelief was hard to hide. His expression shifted to one of hurt and frustration, clearly hoping for a more sympathetic ear. No, Kimberly, this isn't made up. I'm in deep trouble, and coming to you was my last resort, he insisted, desperation lacing his voice. So let me guess, you spiraled after our divorce, and now you're in debt. Was it that trip you mentioned? I couldn't keep my voice down, drawing curious glances from other cafe patrons. I shot them an apologetic look, trying to regain my composure. I got caught up in something foolish, I admit, but now I'm in a mess that's bigger than I can handle alone, Joseph said, his gaze pleading. My frustration was close to boiling over. How could he waltz back into my life with yet another crisis? Yet beneath, I couldn't completely ignore the last shred of empathy I felt for him. How much do you owe? I asked, bracing myself. $45,000, he responded sheepishly. $45,000? Joseph, are you out of your mind? The cafe patrons turned their heads, their stares sharp as knives. This time, I didn't bother to apologize for my outburst. If they were in my shoes, hearing what I was hearing, they would likely react the same way. Kimberly, please, I'm begging you. I've got nowhere else to turn. I know I've made a mess of things, but you're the one person who really believed in me, Joseph pleaded, his eyes shining with a sincerity that reminded me of the man I once cared for. I once loved him, but those days were long gone. My priority now was self-preservation, even if it meant walking away from him. Don't pull at my heartstrings, Joseph. It's way too late for that, I said, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of his situation. At most, I need $112,000, but I owe $45,000, he replied, his voice a mix of disbelief and indignation. Overwhelmed, he began to cry, oblivious to the uncomfortable glances from others around us. Joseph, calm down. This isn't the place for a scene, I said, trying to grasp the full extent of his predicament. What's going to happen if you don't pay it back? They're threatening to hurt me, Kimberly. I'm not joking. This is really bad, he managed between sobs. I recognized the gravity of his situation and softened a bit. Okay, Joseph, start from the beginning. Tell me everything. He recounted his story, explaining how he had tried to finance an extravagant trip for his parents but had relied on a friend who ultimately let him down, leaving him trapped in significant debt. As he spoke, I felt a whirlwind of emotions, frustration at his recklessness and begrudging amusement at the irony of his predicament. So, you borrowed money from dangerous people to impress your parents who haven't even acknowledged your efforts? I asked incredulously. Joseph's face fell, tears streaking down his cheeks as he faced the bitter truth. It's true. Since that trip, it's like I don't exist to them, he admitted, remorse palpable in his voice. Despite everything, I couldn't help but feel a twinge of sympathy for him. This was a harsh dose of reality for Joseph, forcing him to confront the consequences of his decisions. Yes, I know the last thing you want to hear is I told you so, but you did bring this upon yourself. I warned you this wasn't a smart move. Worse yet, you chose to divorce me over it. And now look where you are. Sought their approval, invested everything into their wishes, only to be met with silence. It's a tough lesson, but it's one you needed to learn. My words were heavy with concern and resignation. This situation was a difficult reality for both of us. Joseph had pinned his self-worth on people who couldn't appreciate his sacrifices, and I had to accept that I couldn't shield him from his own choices any longer. As we sat in silence, the weight of our past, filled with broken promises and dreams, pressed down on us. At that moment, I realized it was time to let go completely. No more second chances. Joseph needed to confront the repercussions of his actions on his own, and I had to pursue my happiness elsewhere. I do hope you find a way out of this, Joseph, I said, my voice tinged with a finality that surprised even me. You're not going to help? Joseph looked at me in disbelief. What the heck? No, Joseph, I can't help you. Why not? He pressed. Because I don't have the resources to bail you out. And even if I did, taking a loan and spend a lifetime repaying is out of the question. I can't afford to be as careless as you've been, I explained, my resolve firm. Come on, Kimberly, please. I'm begging you, he persisted, his desperation clear. Expecting me to solve this for you, especially with how you're acting, is unrealistic, I said, my patience wearing thin. Yeah, I did expect that. You're my ex-wife, not my enemy, he replied, still clinging to a sliver of hope. But it was clear our paths had diverged too far. My journey was about finding peace and joy independent of the chaos that surrounded him. And that's exactly the problem, Joseph. You assume I'll always be around to pick up the pieces because that's what I've always done. I was your wife. It was natural for me to help you out of your troubles. But I can and shouldn't keep doing that. It's not my job or my responsibility. After everything, I don't owe you anything, especially considering how our hard-earned money was wasted on your toxic parents. It's because I love them, Joseph said. But I love myself too, I replied. Loving myself means doing what's best for me, which includes protecting my well-being. Joseph lowered his gaze, a sign of concession. He understood the assistance he sought wouldn't come from me. Since you seem to be out of options, I'll offer you one piece of advice. Move somewhere far away where they can't reach you. If that's not something you can manage, then I'm not sure what more you expect from me. He sat there silent, his demeanor shifting to irritation, seemingly upset by my firm stance on not rescuing him this time. It's time for us to go our separate ways, Joseph. I can't allow myself to be pulled back into the turmoil of your life. We both deserve to find our peace, I said, hoping you'd understand. If you wished me well, you'd help, he retorted. Goodbye, Joseph. I'm changing my number, I declared, standing up to leave. As I walked away, Joseph remained seated, his expression a complex mix of feelings. It was a difficult yet essential step for the sake of my happiness and self-respect.
Let's play again, Grandma. Cody's innocent smile is still imprinted in my mind. That day when I saw off Emily and Cody at the door, I never imagined it would be the last. Be careful, I said, a little worried. It's okay, Mom, don't worry, Emily replied with her usual bright smile. That was the last moment I saw my beloved family. A few hours later, terrible news arrived. I rushed to the hospital in disbelief. There, I saw Emily and Cody, cold and lifeless. Everything had been taken from us. My son, David, was speechless, sinking into a deep sorrow. We lived our days just waiting for time to pass. A year went by, and one day, at the local church, I saw something that made me stop in my tracks. There, among another family, I saw Emily and Cody. It was impossible. My name is Mary. I was born and raised in a quiet rural town, and even after marriage, I've always lived here. After my husband passed away, I kept this house going by myself. When my son David got married and my grandson Cody was born, the loneliness eased a little. Emily was such a wonderful daughter-in-law, always filling the house with laughter when she visited. Cody's smile was the greatest comfort to me. One day, while Emily was preparing tea in the kitchen, Cody sat on my lap, clutching his crayons. Grandma, let's draw more. What should we draw? A big fish, Cody answered enthusiastically. Okay, Grandma will help too, I said as I joined him in drawing a big fish on the paper. Wow, Grandma! Do you think we could catch a fish this big? Seeing Cody's sparkling eyes, I couldn't help but smile. I'm sure you could, Cody. You can do anything. Cody nodded happily and continued coloring with his crayons. Thank you for spending time with Cody, Mom. He's been talking about drawing with you all the time lately. I love drawing with Cody. He's always welcome. He really is Grandma's boy. Even when we have a little free time, all he talks about is you and when we can visit again. Emily laughed as she spoke, and my heart filled with happiness. That conversation remains one of my most treasured memories. Cody's smile, Emily's warm words, and David's strength. Those are the things I will never forget. But I never imagined that one day it would all be shattered in an instant. That day started like any other, with no knowledge of what was to come. The rain softly tapping the window seemed to mark the passage of time. Normally, Emily would call and say they were coming over to play, but that day was different.
Mom, something happened. Emily and Cody were in an accident.
An accident? I asked, my voice shaking.
Their car went off the road and into the ocean.
I couldn't believe it. I didn't want to believe it. But accidents happen so suddenly. Emily was driving, and as she turned a curve, the car skidded on the wet road and lost control. The car plunged into the ocean. By the time the rescue team arrived, the car had already sunk. David tried to dive into the ocean to search for them, but the police stopped him. The overwhelming reality left him standing helpless. Rescue teams searched, but hope faded with each passing minute. David was consumed with regret, thinking that if he had gotten there sooner, he could have done something. Weeks later, the search was called off, and we held a funeral without their bodies. Emily's parents had divorced when she was young, and her mother passed away shortly after Cody was born. Emily had finally found her family with David, but that too was taken away. I couldn't stop crying, barely able to stand. David, trying to support me, was lost in his own grief, unsure of how to cope.
Mom, I feel like Emily and Cody were trying to tell me something that day, but I couldn't do anything.
David, you did everything you could. No one is to blame. Yet I could see the regret lingering in his heart. The accident wasn't anyone's fault. It was just fate, as cruel as it was. Since that day, the house has been silent. The sounds of Cody running around and Emily's laughter felt like distant memories. Both David and I carried our grief in our own ways, trying our best to move forward. One day, I went to the store, more out of routine than necessity. As I waited in line at the register, I overheard whispers behind me. My body froze as I realized what they were discussing. They were whispering about my family's tragedy, how Cody had been so young, and how terrible it all was. I didn't need to turn around to know who they were. Local women from our neighborhood. Their words pierced my heart. To them, it was just gossip, but to me, it was a reminder of my deep pain. I couldn't say anything. I just packed my groceries in silence, feeling their cool stares on my back. I wanted to leave, but my legs wouldn't move. How could people use someone's pain as a topic for gossip? Even though I was screaming those words inside, I couldn't voice them. I knew that no matter what I said, they wouldn't understand, and speaking up would only spread more rumors. I left the store, my heart heavy with sorrow. When I got home, I went straight to the altar where Emily and Cody's pictures stood. Talking to them has become part of my daily routine since that day. I went shopping today. I bought the candy Cody used to love. I wonder if we'll ever eat it together again. I whispered to their photos, knowing full well they were gone but still feeling as if they were near. That evening, David came home from work looking exhausted. After dinner, as I was cleaning up, he spoke to me.
Mom, I'm thinking about visiting Emily and Cody's grave soon.
Let's go together. We can talk to them.
Yeah, I feel like I need to say something to them. I couldn't do anything for them that day.
I could still hear the regret in David's voice. David, you did everything you could. The police stopped you from diving in for a reason. I'm just glad you're safe. That's all that matters.
But maybe if I'd gotten there sooner, I could have done something.
No, it was just bad luck. No one is to blame. David stayed silent, looking down. I gently patted his back, knowing we had to support each other to overcome this sorrow. We had to keep going for Emily and Cody's sake. The next morning, David and I prepared to visit Emily and Cody's grave. As we stood there, it was different from praying at the altar. Being in front of them brought a wave of indescribable emotion.
Emily? Cody? Are you doing okay?
David's voice was quiet, filled with both deep sadness and a hint of resolution. We'll keep doing our best, so watch over us, okay? As I prayed, I felt closer to them than when I prayed at home. Little by little, we were moving forward. That was the best way we could honor Emily and Cody's memory. A few years later, I found myself visiting the local church again. There was no special reason, just a quiet walk. It was a festive day, with families celebrating the traditional ceremonies for their children. As I watched the families, I couldn't help but think of Emily and Cody. If they were still here, Cody would be dressed up and smiling for pictures, just like the other children. I walked through the church, lost in thought, when suddenly my eyes locked on a family. There, taking pictures in traditional clothing, was a mother and son. It would have been an ordinary scene, but I couldn't take my eyes off them. "Is that Emily?" I muttered under my breath. She looked exactly like Emily. And next to her, there was a boy who looked just like Cody. They were smiling and taking pictures with their family. But how? I stood frozen, unable to comprehend. Emily and Cody were supposed to have died in that accident. Could I be mistaken? But they looked too much like them. We had accepted their deaths and tried to move forward, yet here they were. Was this a dream? I muttered to myself, but the scene in front of me was all too real. How could Emily and Cody be here? I was completely bewildered, standing frozen in place. Emily and Cody, or whoever they were, didn't notice me. They continued chatting with their family. The scene was so normal, it felt eerie, like the accident had never happened. Were they really alive? I kept asking myself that question, but no answer came. Eventually, I stepped away and sat down on a bench behind the church, my mind in chaos. What I had just seen was real, but it didn't make sense.
"Mom, are you okay?"
I could hear David's voice in my head, even though he wasn't there. Should I tell him what I saw? I took a deep breath, trying to calm down. I had to be sure of what I saw before telling anyone. Was that really Emily and Cody? I couldn't shake the image from my mind. Why? Why would they be here? I whispered to myself again. With renewed determination, I stood up and returned to where I saw them. But they were gone. The family that had been there just a few minutes before had vanished like a mirage. Where did they go? I searched the grounds in a panic, but no matter where I looked, I couldn't find them. How could they disappear so suddenly? Was it a dream? I lightly pinched my cheek, feeling the pain. No, this wasn't a dream. I knew what I saw. When I got home, David was sitting on the couch, looking tired but relieved.
"Mom, you look pale. Did something happen?"
David, I went to the church earlier today. I saw Emily and Cody.
"What? Are you sure?"
I couldn't believe it either, but it was them. They were there with a family, celebrating the festival.
"Mom, could it have been a vision? Maybe your grief made you see something that wasn't really there."
No, it wasn't a vision. I saw them, David. It was Emily and Cody. I know it was.
"But Emily and Cody, they're..."
His voice trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. I didn't know how to explain it, but I knew what I saw. Tomorrow, I'll go back to the church and see if I can find out more.
"Mom, don't push yourself. We've worked so hard to accept what happened and move on. Don't make it harder for yourself."
I know, David, but I need to know why. Why would they be there without telling us? I need answers. That night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. Emily and Cody's faces constantly appearing in my mind. If what I saw was real, I needed to know why they had kept it from us. A few days later, we decided to investigate further. If Emily and Cody were alive, I needed to understand how this was possible. At first, I thought it might have been a mistake or a case of mistaken identity. But as time passed, I became more convinced it was really them. David felt the same.
"I'll ask some of Emily's friends. Maybe someone knows something."
David acted quickly, and I helped however I could, but Days went by without any new information. And then one day, David came home with a lead.
I spoke to one of Emily's friends. She says she heard Emily might be living under a different name.
What?
At first, her friend didn't believe it either, but recently she found out the rumor was true.
So, Emily didn't die? She's been living under an alias?
That's right. She's been living with another man and Cody.
My head spun with confusion. How could Emily have survived the accident and started a new life without telling us?
She didn't just survive. The accident was staged. We were tricked.
I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Emily had faked the accident, moved on with another man, and taken Cody with her? It felt like a bad dream.
The accident was staged, Mom. We've been lied to all this time.
My mind went blank. David had uncovered evidence that the accident was no accident at all.
There's proof that the car went into the ocean intentionally.
David showed me the report, and the evidence was undeniable.
Mom, I still can't fully believe it, but the evidence is there. She betrayed us. She took Cody away.
I could hear the anger in David's voice. I couldn't believe Emily would go this far, taking Cody and building a new life without us.
We need to act. We can't let her get away with this. Cody is our family.
David was right. We had to protect Cody. We couldn't let Emily keep him under her control. We continued gathering evidence and working with a lawyer to take legal action. Emily had crossed too many lines, and we were determined to expose her deceit and get Cody back. The more we uncovered, the clearer it became how far Emily had gone to escape her old life. She had even used David's name to collect insurance money after the staged accident. It became clear that Emily had been living a double life, using Cody as leverage. Our lawyer assured us that we had a strong case.
This is a clear-cut case of insurance fraud. You have all the evidence needed to win this case.
With the lawyer's help, we filed a lawsuit against Emily, and the case began to move forward. As the trial date approached, my heart was heavy with anger and sadness. I had never imagined that Emily, whom I once loved like a daughter, would betray us like this. In court, Emily stood before us emotionless. The sight of her brought back all the pain and anger I had tried to suppress. But I knew I had to stay calm for Cody's sake.
Mom, are you okay?
David whispered to me, sensing my emotions. I nodded slightly, trying to steady myself.
Mrs. Emily, how do you explain your actions after the accident?
For a moment, Emily averted her eyes, but then she regained her composure and spoke. I did everything for Cody. That's all I ever cared about. Her words shook me. Did she really believe that? How could taking Cody away and deceiving us be in his best interest? David clenched his fists, clearly struggling to hold back his anger.
Why did you take out the insurance policy in David's name?
The lawyer pressed on, revealing more of Emily's deceit. The evidence of her fraud and betrayal continued to pile up, and Emily's calm facade began to crack. The tension in the courtroom grew heavier as Emily's lies were exposed. At one point, Emily fell silent, clearly realizing she couldn't talk her way out. It's not my fault. The circumstances forced me to do it. Those words ignited something in me. Circumstances? Did she really think that was enough to justify tearing our family apart? I forced myself to stay calm, reminding myself that Cody was what mattered most. The trial continued, and one by one, Emily's lies were unraveled. She had tricked us, stolen from us, and used Cody as a pawn in her scheme. David finally confronted her directly.
Why did you do it, Emily? Why fake the accident and leave us for another man?
His voice trembled with anger, yet he remained controlled. I just wanted my freedom. Living with you felt like a burden. I wanted to start over with Cody and a new life.
A burden? You faked everything, took Cody, and left us for your own selfish reasons?
I couldn't stand living like that anymore. Everything felt cold between us, and I felt like I was sacrificing myself for Cody. But then I met someone else, and I saw a chance to restart my life.
Then why didn't you just divorce me?
I wanted money. You don't have any financial security. I needed to reset everything and live my life for me. David was livid. I could see Emily's confidence crumbling as David pressed on.
Cody is what matters. I'm here to fight for my son, not for anything else.
His words filled me with a sense of calm. We were here to protect Cody, to keep him safe from Emily's deceit. In the end, Emily lost custody of Cody, and she was ordered to return the insurance money she had fraudulently claimed. She had lost everything, including her new partner, and her life fell apart completely. But Cody came back to us. When I hugged my grandson again, I finally felt a sense of peace. Cody smiled and said, "Grandma, let's play again." I couldn't hold back my tears. "Of course, Cody. We'll play as much as you want." His smile brought our family back together, and the weight of the past began to lift. Slowly, our family was healing. Cody was full of life again, and David cherished every moment with him. Spending time with Cody helped fill the hole in my heart. Our family had been through so much, but we were whole again.